Hello, my friends and freundins. After 3 months of vacations, work, stagnation, and other common everyday adventures, I can finally welcome you once again to a brand new episode of the Troglodyte channel. I'm really happy to be back again. I hope you are too. So, let us begin. I've built this M4A1 76W Sherman tank a few years ago. But I never got into painting it because back then I was in, let's say, in an assembly mode only. And since I was very excited with my previous build and paint job of the Sherman, I felt a certain urge to paint and finally complete this one as well. As you can see, this tank carries a lot of detail on it. Some of it I still like today, which I kept, and some other details I would remove and I would try to improve them. For example, I replaced some of the old school made paper tarps with ones from epoxy putty, or I made better ones out of paper. And I also added some battle damage with my Dremel tool. The leather straps, which hold the tools in place, look a little bit clumsy and even out of scale, I might say, but for some reason I decided to keep them. Maybe as a reminder for the progress I've made from this old modeling period of my life until today. Anyway, I masked all of the periscope glass parts in order to prepare them for painting, and I decided to glue the commander's hatch facing the wrong direction. I don't know exactly why I did that, even though I knew it was a mistake, but I will fix it later. I gave the sides of the tank some texture using super glue for some reason, and after that, and a long 3-year wait, my Sherman was ready to finally be painted. First, I gave it a nice white coating with a spray primer, and then I made a mix of olive green and olive drab, and I couldn't wait to apply it on my model. But this will get a little bit difficult for you to see, because my head would constantly get in the way between the camera and my model. Luckily, I managed to take a few shots that look relatively good. And also my airbrush would keep getting clogged all the time, since I'm too lazy to clean it properly, which would also create a little bit of frustration. Anyway, the good thing is that I managed to make some relatively presentable highlights with my airbrush on the surfaces of the vehicle. But later I decided that it didn't look that good, so I went over it again with a darker green in order to make the highlights again less prominent. Finally, I realized that I had erased all of the highlights with the darker green, and now the tank looked flat again, so I went over it once again. Of course, in some places I managed to make a total mess with the airbrush, since I do not possess the art of it, like I've said in the past. So, after a little bit of frustration and a lot of indecisiveness, I decided that the best option would be to go back to my old trusty hand brush. I used a relatively thin one and I started covering up all of the ugly and messy parts which I didn't like, making them even uglier and even messier. Eventually I reached into a point where I was somewhat satisfied with the result, and I called it relatively good. Anyways, I was done with the main color of the tank, so I immediately proceeded with the application of the decals. I used a couple that were included in the model kit, some old ones from Tamiya, and a couple of others that I do not remember where they came from. And they look pretty good on the surface of the vehicle. But again, I did a pretty terrible job filming the whole procedure, so I will have to apologize about this once again. After they were dry, the decals, I airbrushed a coat of gloss varnish on top of them. Then I mixed up a couple of colors and I came up with a nice light olive green, which I will use to do the chipping all around my Sherman. It looked really nice, but it was a little bit too dark, as you can also probably see. So I decided to go over it, the specific light green chipping color, with an even lighter green, and this time with a thin brush. In certain places over the surface of the vehicle you can also see the mess I made before with the airbrush. But I have to say that I was very satisfied with the overall color of the tank by the time this project was finally completed. This was a nice surprise, but it was also the fruit of intense and precise labor. So now I had the surface of my beautiful Sherman finally completed, or at least mostly completed. And it was time to paint the stowage, the canisters on the back, the tools, the leather straps and other things, along with their many tiny details. This, of course, and similarly pretty much every aspect of my life, doesn't go in any particular order. I'm just going around the tank randomly and I'm painting stuff, depending the color I have on my brush at the time. Somewhere along the way I forgot I was painting the details on the vehicle and I started doing some occasional chipping again. and you can see by yourselves, like I was saying before, that the surface gradually becomes better and better chromatically. Slowly, the imperfections of my terrible airbrushing will be integrated onto the surface of the tank, alongside with all of the scratches and the rest of the marks. Those that are tearing apart the unifying olive green color, and at the same time they are creating a very unique and pretty surface. Yeah. Eventually, I went back into painting the details, and then I got distracted again, and I broke off the commander's hatch in order to glue it again properly this time. And then, after I got bored with all of the tiny thingy-jingies that I had to paint with a tiny brush, I decided to do something easier. Meaning, I started applying mud on the tank's tracks. I didn't use any color or any primer before I did that. I just started applying the mud on the rubber tracks as they were, because I wanted the first basic coat of thick, solid mud. I did the same thing in all of the areas around the suspension as well. I didn't even bother to paint the tires of the road wheels black, because in my mind the lower half of this tank would be absolutely and totally covered in mud. Now, to be honest, the mud isn't that thick. I would prefer it if it were a little bit thicker, but I didn't want to overdo it because the suspension has some beautiful detail and I tried to keep it. In the end I lost the detail and the mud isn't that thick, but at least it's really dirty. I think I nailed it with this one. After it had dried, I gave it a second coating of mud, just to be sure. And with that out of the way, I had to find the courage once again to go on with the rest of the details that I had to paint. I didn't find any courage, and I was not in the mood, but I went with it anyways. And while I was painting, I started feeling pretty good. So I kept going. I even painted the very thin ropes that you can see around the hull. These ones I was really scared to paint, but I knew that I would have to face my fears, and it didn't go that bad. And this way, slowly my Sherman was becoming a beautiful amalgamation of not only shapes, but colors as well. And the shape. I think this is the most detailed Sherman I've ever made. And by detail I mean that it has a lot of stuff on it. A lot of tiny objects that are intermingling alongside other bigger objects, and so on. And I think all of these small and interesting details give it a special personality. So, of course, I tried my best to paint them the way they deserve to be painted. I hope I did them good. I mean, look at the front of the tank. What an amazing front view. I really love it. Of course, later I will also add a rope to hold the box in place. We have to keep it reasonably realistic, after all. And when finally every part that needed to be painted another color than olive green was actually painted another color than olive green, it was time to add the oil paints. But first, I should fit the tracks in place, now that the mud is all dried up. It was very easy, since they are made of rubber, but the thing is, for some reason they look a little bit loose. I will try to force them in place later. And now comes the longer and most boring part of the video, and it has to do with the washes. I will be using oil paints and nothing but. No pigments or acrylics for the weathering. And for the next 5 to 6 minutes I will be doing only that. I thought I'd give it a try this way, and we will see together how this will end up. I'm really curious, because I have no idea. I would apply random droplets of oil paint here and there, all around the surface of the tank. Oh, this is a nice brown right there. And later I would go back and dilute them with white spirit, and I would try this way to achieve an aesthetically pleasing look. And as you can see, and some streaks of rust underneath those pointy thingies, I applied various colors of oil paints, mostly earthly colors, shades of brown that is, and of course a lot of black in all of the tight spaces. And as my amazing wash application technique secrets are unfolding in front of you, let me take this time in the meanwhile to say that from now on my episodes will take a lot more time to be completed, since I have a new normal job, like most other human persons, and therefore it is much harder for me now to find enough time within the weekdays in order to complete an episode within a relative short amount of time. So yes, from now on, my episodes will be more sparsely uploaded when it comes to time. And once again, of course, I will have to apologize. But this is life. I mean, I cannot die of hunger. So, as you can see, I went over the same surfaces I think 4 times. In between I would let it dry or forcefully dry it, and sometimes I would give it a coat of matte varnish in order to preserve the coloring and the work I did so far. And eventually I would go back into adding more washes. I also made a few water streaks on the side, but they will be barely visible by the end of the dirt application. I was especially careful with the weathering of all of these tiny objects, which are gathered on the back and the front of the tank. Since I gave them such nice colors before, I also wanted to do them good by adding certain colors of washes as well. They will have to look distinct and interesting, and I tried to achieve that. Eventually I reached a point where I was satisfied with the result, for now at least, so I opted to make a couple of ropes from a string to place around the rear part in order to hold all of the stowage in place. I know I should have done it before applying the washes, but I intend to apply more washes afterwards anyways, so I made the thin rope, I painted it a very bright yellow color, and I carefully and slowly placed it through and all around the stowage compartment in such an order that it could hold all of this stuff, along with the leather straps of course, in place, allowing the driver to display his amazing driving skills. I totally cracked the one lower side of the vehicle while I was trying to pull out the holding stick, and while I was trying to fix it with cement glue, a drop fell on top of the tank and created this mess that you are watching right now. The tool was a little bit damaged while I was trying to remove it, but it will be fine. I will fix it with more washes. Don't mind the bright yellow of the rope, it will get darker eventually. And also don't mind the melted tools next to the rolled tarp. Like I said, later they will look a little bit better. I would continue with the washes and still wouldn't be satisfied, so I kept adding some more. This is why you're seeing this semi-chaotic up and down here. I was trying to achieve the perfect look, which I did not achieve enough. Off camera, I painted these two beautiful sculpted figures, which for the life of me I cannot remember which company they come from. They were in a set of a 4-piece tank crew, and their package I threw away a long time ago. They're not from Alpine Miniatures, I'm sure of that. They're from another company, but which one is it? I tried to do a satisfactory paint job, and to be honest, I'm pretty happy with the way I painted them. They look more than okay in my book. And I even managed to paint their irises. Well, they both have blue eyes now. Maybe I should have chosen to paint each figure's eyes a different color, but now it is what it is. I positioned them in their designated places on the tank, and then I used the light dust brown and the darker brown oil paints in order to splash some droplets of color all around the vehicle. Looking back now, I think I overdid it, but the splashes look pretty cool. I gave it a generous coating of anti-shine varnish with a spray can from Army Modeler, and after that I believe that I'm done and dusted with this beautiful Sherman. Now, am I absolutely sure about that? Not exactly, but in my eyes it looks pretty completed. And there you have it, friends and freundins. The M4A3 76W Sherman. Adorned with lots and lots of tiny details. And the muddy lower half of the vehicle creating a beautiful contradiction, since it absolutely lacks of any detail. It's full of mud. And I love it. I especially like the hanging rocks all around, and also the beautiful muddy coloring I achieved on the sides of the vehicle. And I'm even happy with the figures' faces this time, which was a very pleasant surprise. So that was it, friends and freundins. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video, comment and subscribe, of course. For the next few episodes I will be making a diorama, and it will be a what if, like the youth says, theme, with a little bit of fantasy. I'm thinking something of steampunk post-apocalyptic wasteland World War II scenario, but with dinosaurs. We will see. Take care, friends and freundins. I will see you again soon. Or maybe not so soon. Bye bye.